Welcome to Riders Block. I'm Rex. He's Ryan, and we both have very, very early flights. Actually, you don't have an early flight. How did that work out? 11 o'clock is when you're flying out of Jacksonville. Is that right?
I'm a company man, Rex, saving the company $700 by flying at 11:15 as opposed to about 6 a.m. out of Jax.
Yeah, I don't know what mine was. I'm out at 6 a.m., get in at 10:30, hit the ground running. Hope to see Tiger Woods tomorrow in Tulsa at the PGA Championship. Before we get to that, let's look at what we had this weekend. AT&T Byron Nelson was won by KH Lee. A very, very good final round. But I'm guessing when I ask you what stood out, you're going to go straight to Jordan Spieth.
Well, look, I mean, you got to give KH Lee his props, don't you? I mean, that was a bogey-free 63 to beat a stacked leaderboard that on Sunday, at one point, you had 8 players within a shot of the lead. I mean, you had Spieth up there, Justin Thomas, Hideki Matsuyama, Xander Schauffele. I mean, it's a who's who of PGA Tour stars, and it's KH Lee, who basically has not done anything since this tournament a year ago. Just one top 10 since his breakthrough victory at TPC Craig Ranch last year, Rex, when it was played kind of in front of limited fans. So you have to really tip your cap to the way he played, and hopefully this can springboard him. When you see KH Lee play golf as he did on the back nine, it's like, boy, how does this guy not have 5-10 wins? His game appears that good. But yeah, obviously my big takeaway this week was Spieth, and he certainly looks primed to make a serious run, Rex, at the career Grand Slam. We've been saying for weeks, if not months, that Southern Hills was going to be his best opportunity to kind of finish off this slam in what will now be his 6th attempt. You think of his current form, the course fit at Southern Hills, where it has these small targets, and you're really going to need a tidy short game around the greens, as well as being 4 or 5 hours away from home. Everything was kind of lining up, and now with the game that we're seeing from Jordan Spieth, it certainly makes sense.
Yeah, take nothing away from KH Lee, and if there was a major plate at TPC Craig Ranch, he'd be well on his way to the career Grand Slam as well. But you're right, it's going to be Jordan Spieth for me, and to a little bit lesser degree, but I still was impressed with Hideki Matsuyama. He had a good week, and it's been a minute since he's had a good week, so I think I'm going to kind of watch him a little bit.
He played well at the Masters last month.
Well, yeah, but he's been dealing with injury and sort of indifference since he won the Masters. I don't know that he's done anything really since he won the Masters.
This has been one of his best seasons. He's already had 2 wins. I would say, Rex, those back injuries that he'd suffered this spring kind of derailed what looked to be
could have been
Hideki kind of actually hitting his stride now as a major champion and really steamrolling.
No, and I think that's what impressed me. I mean, if you sit and watch what he does, and when you go into the major championships, the PGA Championship next week, I think you're going to look at what Hideki does. But it was Jordan Spieth. I'm with you on that. I'm still wildly unimpressed with, just the visuals of the swing. But what it's producing is very, very impressive. But watching it is, aesthetically, it is not a fun game to watch. I don't know about you because you've been in the bag for Jordan for a very, very long time. But it is still painting by numbers. It is still not the artist that we're used to seeing out on the golf course creating shots. I still think he's kind of thinking his way through this a little bit.
Look, he doesn't want to have that drastic rehearsal, but it's hard to argue with the results. No, obviously, after that surprising miscut at Augusta National, led the field in strokes gained tee to green at the RBC Heritage, now on a wide open golf course where you could really kind of freewheel it. He was second in that statistic. His ball striking is as good as Jordan Spieth can hit it. He has a lot more speed, a lot more pop in the bat. That part of the game, to me, even if it doesn't necessarily look aesthetically pleasing, looks incredibly strong. To me, it's sort of that short putting. I mean, the 9-footer that he had on the 71st hole to tie KH lead, his lead, like it didn't even get to the hole. He missed about a 3-footer on the 10th hole. If he can just sort of avoid those debilitating, momentum-killing misses from short range, Spieth is definitely going to be in the mix next week.
And putting's not something that I sit around and worry about for Jordan Spieth. And I know that's not necessarily been the case the last few years. He kind of is what his record says he is. And he has struggled in that range. But I still believe that he finds whatever that magical touch is that made him such a special player in 2015, 2016 on the greens. As far as the swing goes, you're absolutely right. Statistically, you can't argue with any part of that other than it just looks like he's putting lipstick on the Mona Lisa.
Yeah, perhaps so, but he's absolutely striping it. So Jordan Spieth, especially at a golf course like Southern Hills, wider fairways, small targets, you really got to be precise. To me, he's, if not the favorite, I'm sure we're going to get into that. He's probably the second favorite behind Scottie Scheffler.
We are first going to talk about someone who's not going to be at Southern Hills, and it was on Friday afternoon, and it came out via the PGA of America, not Phil
5
Mickelson.
p.m. Eastern time.
Yes, the deadline, all that Friday afternoon news dump that we're so happy about, as you and I are writers, and we're sitting around on a Friday afternoon wanting to do nothing work related, but you have to sit and you have to wait and watch. Phil Mickelson is not going to play the PGA Championship. I don't know that surprises me all that much, but moving this forward, when do you think we'll actually see Phil next?
So on golfchannel.com, since apparently you didn't want to pitch in on Friday night, rather than going to food trucks, I pounded out a column on Phil Mickelson.
You did go to the food truck. You sent me a picture of your kid eating ice cream. You did go to the food truck.
I went there later, but I had to pound the beers because I was arriving a little bit later than anticipated. Not that I'm arguing or upset about that. I think Rex, you're right, and we've talked about this a couple of times on Writer's Block. It seemed highly unlikely that he was going to play in the PGA Championship. Not sure he's ready to face the media. Not sure he's ready to face fans who have probably not forgiven him for what he said over the last couple months. He's certainly potentially even his peers. He's not yet ready to face them. Where he would, however, have a more welcome crowd would be the first Live Golf event, which is scheduled for June 9th through 11th, the week before the U.S. Open. To me, that makes a lot of sense. What better way to say sorry for putting Live Golf, Greg Norman, all those constituents through the ringer over these past couple months than make your competitive return in the first event of the rival tour? That, to me, is the ultimate way to say sorry. That is where I think we will see Phil Mickelson play next, especially if, as the Telegraph reported, he's received $30 million up front to play. I think he's contractually obligated to be there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good pull. And I'm just going to say this. When you think about the PGA Championship, where he would have been the defending champion, and there would have been such a spotlight on him and so many questions that he either can't or won't answer. And so I think this was always going to be the option, as badly as I'm sure he probably wanted to be there. Because let's just think back 3 or 4 months ago. This was going to be a coronation. We were going to celebrate the 51-year-old Phil Mickelson, who won the PGA Championship last year and had a late in life victory and all the great things that he brings to the game. And instead, he's still in hiding. I think you're right. I think we see him at the Live Golf event in June, just outside London. I do think it's interesting that sets up a scenario where he could possibly play the U.S. Open the very next week. And the reason I bring this up, and the only reason I bring this up, is because that's going to push the conversation away from the two principles in this, which is the PGA Tour and Live Golf. And they both made their stance clear. This is going to force an outside organization to take a stance, in this case, the USGA, and decide if they're going to allow Phil Mickelson, who clearly defied the PGA Tour, and let's say in theory he played this event after being denied that conflicting,
which you would think would trigger automatic discipline, whether it's a fine.
You would think so,
ban.
But I'm going to go. I'm going to come in with a hot take now and say that I don't know that the USGA wants that heat. I don't know that the USGA wants to be part of that fight, simply because they're going to look at this as a very, very long-term fight, and this is something that the PGA Tour has to deal with. I'm not sure right now that Michael Wan and the USGA has any interest in getting involved in that.
You're probably right, and I think the quick turnaround certainly is working in their favor to allow him to play if he even wants to play, Rex. I'm not sure it's a given that he wants to play in the U.S. Open, not just considering his acrimonious relationship with the USGA, but that thing cuts both ways. Yes, he did receive a special exemption last year to play at Torrey Pines, but sorry, I take that back. Phil did not receive a special exemption to play. He was supposed to, and he said he would have taken it, but then, of course, he won
qualified
at Kiowa, and so he was exempt for the next 5 years. They have a very complicated relationship. I'm not sure Phil would necessarily want to turn up at the U.S. Open a week after the Live event. He may just be biding his time until Portland.
He might like the idea of putting it in the USGA's lap, just like for all the reasons you just described, because of the fact that, look, we've had this relationship that's been lukewarm at best, and I'm going to put you on the hot seat, and you have to make a decision. Now, the rules have not changed since Haley left. We miss you, Haley. Very much so. We miss
Haley.
You. Jason took the headline away. We have to move on. And the next one is...
How's Chicago, Haley? Let us know.
How is Chicago? And the next one is Tiger Woods is on site at Southern Hills. He did a scouting trip. Now he is at the championship. A bunch of things to dissect here, and I'm sure we're going to do it again on Wednesday when we sit down for another writer's block. But I'm going to make this very, very simple. Where do you think he's going to finish?
Oh, boy. No. I mean, I think this is a greater barometer of what his short-term future looks like. I'm not sure it's necessarily rosy. I'll say outside the top 30 I do think he can. I do think he can make the cut. I think he's actually better suited, Rex, for a PGA Championship, which by all accounts is going to be a pretty difficult one. Somewhere, I think the director of golf estimated somewhere between the 5 to 10 under par range. I think he's better suited where pars are rewarded as opposed to he's going to have to win a shootout where it's 15, 16, 17 under par. I don't think his game is quite going to be that sharp. However, he can still plot his way around a golf course. It's obviously a golf course that he has had success on, even if it was 15 years ago before the restoration. I think he's better suited for that kind of test, but I don't think he's going to contend. I think if he is going to contend in a major this year, it will come at St. Andrews. But I do think it's a very encouraging sign that over these past couple of weeks, he felt good enough with his body, with his game, to go ahead and tee it up when, even after the Masters, he said it was pretty much uncertain.
Yeah, I'm going to go top 30. I'm with you. I think he will make the cut because even starting out at Augusta when we had no idea what to expect, at least on Thursday, there were signs that, he can still do this. He can still go out and contend with the best players on the world on the hardest golf courses. I don't know if he can sustain it over 72 holes. And until I see that, I guess I'm going to sit here and hold out judgment. The part that I don't get, and I'm going to continue to go back to this, is why. We saw how much pain he was in at Augusta. We saw how difficult this was. And I'm just going to ask, why does he want to continue to do this? Because you're right. I think in his heart of hearts, he wants to see how he stacks up in this situation. He wants to see, can I contend again for a major championship? And I would be curious if we extrapolate this out, how many tied for 30 seconds at major championships is he going to be willing to put up with?
Yeah, I think it's probably too soon for that conversation. I am surprised, Rex, that he's even playing in this major championship. I am a very literal person. And so when he said that he was definitely committing to the Open Championship and that he was uncertain for these next two majors with the PGA Championship and the US Open, I thought that meant that we were not going to see him for 3 months. I thought that Augusta National had taken too much out of him, that he was going to need to kind of recuperate from that, then recover, then rebuild towards his next tournament start. That he's able to do it again a month later kind of shows you where his head is. Maybe he knows that he just has a certain number of reps, has a certain number of bullets that are left, and he wants to use them before his leg gives out, his back gives out, his neck gives out, his wrist gives out, whatever else it takes to put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
No, I totally agree. All right, Jason, we're paying attention. We're going to finish here.
Sorry,
strong.
Jason.
Yep, he's clearly not paying attention to you. You just get used to that, Jason. This is your life now. He's not going to pay attention when you get rid of the headlines. We're going to finish off with who are the early PGA favorites. I think you touched on Jordan. We don't have to go back to him, but who's joining him on top of that list?
Well, look, Scotty Scheffler. I mean, he's won 4 of his last 7 starts. He's the reigning Masters champion. There is nothing either at the Zurich or at the Nelson that leads me to believe that this hot streak is somehow going to start crashing down. He finished in a tie for 15th in what was a shootout at the Nelson as well, was seemingly strong throughout the bag. I think you have to put him as a tournament favorite. Do you not, Rex? Until he stops winning 50% of his tournament starts, to me, Scotty Scheffler is 1, Jordan Spieth is 2. And then I think you can start to get into a little bit of a debate. I would put Jon Rahm in the 3 hole. We haven't seen him now for a couple of weeks, but last time we did, looked very impressive and holding off, I would call it a weaker field at the Mexico Open to notch his first title in the past 11 months. Where you going that 4 through 5 side? I think we could probably agree those 1 through 3. Where you putting Rory? Where you putting JT, Morikawa, guys like that?
Well, Patrick Cantlay is actually going to go in the 4 spot for me. I just think the way he's been playing.
Major record, 2 top 10s.
No,
2
I
career
know.
top 10s in the majors.
And he has to turn that around. I mean, that's a glaring weakness for a player of his quality. For a player who has already accomplished what he's accomplished over the course of his career, he needs to do better. You can make the same argument right now, pretty much, outside of one PGA championship for JT, though. I don't know that JT's record in the major championships is all that great.
5 consecutive over par rounds to begin his major championships, which to me just screams pressure. He's putting too much pressure on himself.
That leaves Rory for me, and I felt like he played well.
Speaking of pressure, guys putting too much pressure on themselves.
Exactly. So it's not. I'm not liking my allies in this particular front, but I do think that Patrick Cantlay, he took something away from that team win with Xander in New Orleans. I do think that Rory McIlroy has taken something not only from his finish at the Wells Fargo 2 weeks ago, but really his finish so far in the spring, and let's call it the early summer. I just think he feels like he's trending in the right direction.
What about Morikawa? 2020 PGA champion, last year's Open champion, had a good week, top 5 at Augusta National.
Give him 6. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like I like those two. I like Patrick and Rory at 4 and 5. But sure, you can have your 6. You can keep going. I thought we were just doing a top 5, but let's keep going. Who's 7?
I'm just a little surprised that Morikawa wasn't as quickly off your tongue as maybe I would have anticipated. Although that's not true. You're always dogging my guy.
No, that's not true. He's a very special player, and I think he'll probably play well at Southern Hills. But when you kind of go down the list, you're right. Scotty has done absolutely nothing for us to take the crown from him. I think I would maybe put Jon Rahm at 2 simply because he is coming off a win, which you were determined to discount because you keep going back and pooping all over the field in Mexico. But I still think it was a very good
Jon Rahm is hitting the golf ball better than he has in his entire career. Leads the tour in strokes gained to the green after leading it last year,
so
and he's been even better.
Putting.
He's been even better than last year.
Putting. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying Rexy is hitting it better than he ever has in his life.
You should bring that up in the press conference. I believe he's on the list on Tuesday. That should be your very first question.
John, are you hitting it as well as you have in your entire life? I'm not talking about putting. I'm talking about strictly ball striking.
And a follow-up. I just have one quick follow-up on your putting, if you don't mind, because he loves those questions so much. Yes, he loves pushing back on those questions. All right, that'll do it for this edition of Writer's Block. We'll be together Wednesday at the Fairfield Inn. Is it a Fairfield Inn? Is that where we are?
It's either that or a Renaissance. I can't keep them all straight. It's definitely a Marriott property. I appreciate Titanium Elite for life.
That'll do it. We'll see you Wednesday.